blood spread across the cold marble floor of a $10 million Upper East Side penthouse. While the life drained out of me, my best friend stood over me, with the empty glass that had poisoned me. And the man I had loved from the shadows wrapped an arm around her waist, as if I were already dead. Then everything went black. When my eyes opened again, the calendar had rolled back 5 years. Chloe Bennett wanted to steal my life a second time. This time I was going to hand it to her myself, polished, gift-wrapped, and lined with barbed wire. The last thing I remembered from my first life was the fire in my throat and the hollow click of Chloe's red-soled heels against imported Italian marble. I had been paralyzed beside the grand piano, unable to move more than my eyes. Chloe, the girl who had once split cheap ramen with me in a cramped Bushwick apartment, stood over my body holding a crystal tumbler. A few drops of bourbon clung to the bottom. "You always were too smart for your own good, Evelyn," she whispered. There was no warmth in her voice. None of the bright, infectious charm that had made me trust her in college. But nobody likes the quiet, smart girl. They like the shiny girl. You built the empire, but I'm the queen. Adrian doesn't want a ghostwriter. He wants me. You shouldn't have threatened to show him the original drafts. I tried to scream. Only a wet, broken sound came out. Then Adrian Cross walked into the room. The billionaire founder of Cross Capital had built a reputation on ruthless instincts, perfect timing, and the ability to see weakness before anyone else did. For years, I had secretly structured deals, models, and acquisition strategies that Chloe presented as her own. Adrian believed she was the mind behind the North Star acquisition, the Meridian strategy, and half the victories that had turned Cross Capital into a financial empire. He looked at Chloe. "Not me. Is it done?" he asked. She nodded. He put his arms around her waist. That was the moment I understood the truth. Adrian had never been another victim of Chloe's lies. He had known enough to know I was dangerous, and he had chosen to remove the loose end. They had planned my death together. Darkness swallowed me. Then I gasped. Air tore into my lungs as I bolted upright, clawing at my throat. There was no marble beneath me, no grand piano, no blood. I was sitting on a sagging mattress in a room, barely wide enough for a bed, a desk, and a narrow closet. Cheap instant coffee hung in the air. A police siren screamed somewhere on the avenue below. My hands were shaking so violently, I could barely push myself to my feet. I stumbled to the cracked mirror on the closet door. A younger face stared back at me. Tired eyes, messy dark hair, pale skin, no bruises, no blood. I grabbed the old smartphone from my nightstand. The screen was cracked across one corner. October 2018, 5 years earlier. The exact day the first domino had fallen. The bedroom door opened. Chloe walked in carrying 2 mugs of coffee. She looked almost painfully young in an oversized university hoodie. Her hair pulled into a careless ponytail, her face bare except for lip balm. Innocent. Familiar. The sight of her made my stomach twist. For one wild second, I wanted to cross the room and put my hands around her throat. I wanted her to feel even one fraction of the terror she had watched me die with. Then I stopped. If I killed her now, I would spend my second life in prison. And Chloe would never understand what it felt like to watch everything she believed belonged to her disappear one piece at a time. Death was too quick. "Morning, sleepyhead," she said, brightly placing a mug on my desk. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Just a nightmare," I said. My voice came out rough. "Well, wake up. I need a massive favor. She sat on the edge of my bed and gave me the helpless little pout that had worked on me for years. You know, the Cross Capital graduate internship. The executive strategy track. I made it to the final round. But they want a full demographic leverage proposal for the Meridian Tech expansion. Evelyn, I can't do it. I don't even know what IBITDA stands for. If I blow this, I'm going to have to move back to Ohio. There it was. The moment that had created Chloe Bennett. In my first life, I spent 3 sleepless nights writing a 60-page proposal so brilliant that Chloe skipped the normal recruiting process, cornered Adrian Cross at a charity luncheon, and put it directly into his hands. He hired her almost immediately. That proposal became the foundation of her career. She became his prodigy, then his lover, then his wife. And I became the invisible woman behind both of them, writing reports, building models, repairing mistakes, and accepting scraps of credit, while Chloe wore my intelligence like culture. Please, Evie, she begged. Just this once. I'll pay your half of the rent for 3 months. I swear I'll make it up to you. I stared at her. I could say no. I could write the proposal under my own name, walk into Cross Capital, and claim the career that should have been mine. Then I remembered Adrian's face as I died, cold, unmoved, already calculating what came next. He was not the prize I had once imagined. He was another predator. And if I simply took Chloe's place, I would still be walking into his cage. No, I did not want her life anymore. I wanted them to build it together. I wanted Chloe to climb so high that she forgot there had ever been ground beneath her feet. I wanted Adrian to stake his name, his fortune, and his reputation on the illusion he found so convenient. Then, I wanted one question to bring the whole thing down. Okay, I said, softly blinked. Really? I'll write it for you. She squealed and threw her arms around me. Oh my God, Evelyn. You are literally a lifesaver. Best friend in the world. You have no idea, I whispered against her shoulder. For the next 3 days, I wrote. The proposal was excellent. It had to be. Adrian Cross would never build an empire on something mediocre. I gave Chloe a sophisticated market synthesis, aggressive acquisition logic, and a framework for integrating Meridian's growth into Cross Capital's portfolio. But this time, I also built something I had never included in my first life. A sensitivity model. I called one of its internal checks the Parker variable. It was not fraudulent. It did not invent assets, hide debt, or falsify revenue. It did something far more useful. It showed exactly how quickly the deal became dangerous if management pushed the growth assumptions beyond a defensible range. In the main presentation, the model looked elegant and profitable. In the risk appendix, it carried a clear warning. If anyone forced the growth target too high while tying Meridian's debt to Cross Capital's equity, the model would stop behaving like a forecast and start behaving like a trap. I documented every assumption, every threshold, every warning. Then I handed the leather-bound portfolio to Chloe. It's done, I said. If they ask about page 42, emphasize the demographic leverage, and don't remove the risk appendix. She snatched it from my hands, without reading more than the first page. You're a saint. I owe you my firstborn. Just remember who got you there. She laughed. I smiled. Chloe got the job exactly as she had before. She bypassed the standard hut-roar channels, cornered Adrian at a charity luncheon in Manhattan, and handed him the proposal herself. By Monday, she had a corner office at Cross Capital, and the title of Junior Executive Strategist. Within 6 months, she was the talk of the firm. Adrian was captivated by her, or rather, he was captivated by the work I kept doing for her. Because Chloe discovered almost immediately that getting the job was easier than surviving it. Cross Capital demanded daily briefings, complex financial models, market intelligence, and the ability to defend every number in a room full of people waiting for weakness. Chloe could charm a boardroom. She could not build the boardroom's math. So she hired me. I need you. Evie, she said over a $400 lunch at a luxury hotel, sliding a contract across the table. I'll pay you triple what you're making at that boutique firm. You stay behind the scenes, you're my secret weapon. Nobody has to know. I signed. I became her ghost again. But this time, every step was deliberate. I moved into a sleek Tribeca apartment paid for by the salary Chloe used to buy my silence. I drafted her emails, built her models, wrote her reports, and fed her the talking points she needed to impress Adrian. And I watched. I watched him fall for the version of Chloe I manufactured. She's brilliant. I once heard Adrian tell a board member during a late-night merger meeting, she sees angles the rest of the market misses. I stood near the mahogany doors, holding a folder of revised projections, my expression blank. Chloe did not know what a derivative was. But by the spring of Heine she was Senior Vice President of Acquisitions. She wore custom suits and diamond bracelets. Her photograph appeared beside Adrian's in society columns. People called them Wall Street's power couple. And still, I stayed behind her shoulder. The difference was that I no longer made her look perfectly consistent. In a speech, I would give her a historical war analogy she had never heard before. In a briefing, I would reference an obscure economic theory she could repeat but not explain. In a model, I would leave one perfectly legitimate assumption that required real understanding to defend, nothing enough to expose her by itself. Just hairline cracks. Adrian noticed. The first real fracture came during the North Star Tech acquisition, the deal that had cemented their bond in my first life. We were in conference room, a glass box overlooking Manhattan. Chloe stood at the head of the long oak table, presenting an integration strategy. I had finished at 3 in the morning. I sat in the back corner with my laptop, dressed like someone nobody needed to remember. The synergy between the two logistics platforms should reduce overhead by 14%. Chloe said, pointing to the screen. It's a modified Pareto application for a digital supply chain. Several board members nodded. Adrian did not. He leaned forward. Walk me through the depreciation of North Star's physical server farms. He said, your synergy assumptions treat the digital layer as scalable. The hardware isn't. Where does the degradation hit the 14%? Chloe froze. In my first life, I had prepared her for that exact question in the back of a cab. This time I had not. The depreciation is factored into the broader overhead, she said. Is it? Adrian opened the dossier in front of him. Page 12 shows the amortization schedule running beside the synergy gains, not against them. That's either a mistake or a choice. Which one? The room went silent. Chloe looked toward me. Her eyes said one thing. Help me. I gave her nothing. I'd need to review the raw data to give you the granular breakdown. She finally said, my team ran those numbers late last night. Adrian's gaze hardened. Your team. I thought you built these models yourself. I oversee them, Chloe said quickly. Adrian looked around the room. Then his eyes landed on me. In my first life, I would have looked down. That woman was dead. I held his stare and let the smallest hint of recognition touch my face. Not fear, not apology, recognition. His eyes narrowed. Meeting adjourned, he said, Chloe, I want the granular breakdown by 5. Bring your assistant. The elevator ride to the top floor was silent except for Chloe biting at one manicured thumbnail. Adrian's office stretched across the corner of the building. All dark wood, glass, and expensive restraint. He stood at the window with a scotch in his hand. Chloe rushed to fill the silence. It was just a minor miscommunication with the quantitative team. I have the corrected data. She motioned for me to hand him the folder. I placed it on his desk. Adrian never looked at the folder. Who is your assistant? He asked. Evelyn Parker, Chloe said too quickly. She handles scheduling, notes, basic support. She doesn't really understand the high-level mechanics. Is that so? He tapped the folder. Evelyn, explain the server farm depreciation. Now, Chloe gave a nervous laugh. Adrian, she's just a secretary. I looked at him. North Star's Ohio data centers use legacy hardware. Physical degradation outpaces the digital synergy by roughly 2.4% annually. The amortization schedule is functioning as a tax shield. So the third quarter cash flow looks stronger without pretending the hardware stopped aging. Silence. Chloe stared at me as if I had struck her. Adrian smiled slowly. There you are, he said. He turned to Chloe. Did you teach her? That we discussed it together, Chloe said. It's collaborative. Get out. Her face went blank. Excuse me. Leave the assistant. Chloe's eyes flashed toward me. Rage, fear, and disbelief fought across her face. Then she walked out, heels striking hard against the floor. The door closed. Adrian poured a second scotch and held it toward me. I did not take it. You wrote the original proposal, he said. It was not a question. Chloe is a strong presenter. Stop. His voice dropped. I've suspected it for months. The woman I speak to at dinner parties does not think like the person writing these models. Chloe is a parrot. You are the architect. He stepped closer. For 1 second, I was back on the marble floor. My throat tightened with a pain that did not exist yet. Adrian noticed. You afraid of me? He asked. The answer came too quickly. His smile disappeared. You should be. There it was. The man from my first life. Not charming. Not brilliant. Not misunderstood. Dangerous. I want you working directly for me, he said. Meridian is moving again. 50 billion, if we structure it correctly. I need the person who actually knows what she's doing. He was offering me everything I once wanted. Recognition, power, a seat beside him. I felt nothing except disgust. I'll build the model, I said. But Chloe stays the face. His eyes narrowed. Why? Because the board trusts the story. You've already sold them. If you expose her now, they start asking what else Cross Capital has misrepresented. That landed. Adrian was quiet for several seconds. Then he smiled again. You really are good. For the next 3 months. Chloe kept wearing the crown, while Adrian and I built Meridian behind closed doors. But she felt him pulling away. He stopped inviting her to private strategy sessions. He stopped asking for her opinion when I was in the room. He corrected her in public. Sometimes he looked at her with open boredom. Paranoia began eating her alive. One night, I came home to find her tearing through my desk drawers. What are you looking for? I asked. She spun around. You're sleeping with him. No, don't lie to me. You're trying to steal my life. I almost laughed. I'm doing exactly what you pay me to do, Chloe. Keeping you from looking like an idiot. Her face twisted. You're fired. She pointed toward the door. The Meridian deal closes Friday. I have the final models. Adrian has the projections. I don't need you anymore. That was the moment I had been waiting for. But then, she did something I had not expected. She reached into her bag and dropped a printed copy of the Meridian Risk Appendix onto the desk. Several pages had been marked in red. My pulse changed. Adrian thinks your downside thresholds are too conservative, she said. He told me to clean them up before the auditors see the final package. I looked at the pages. The Parker variable was circled. For the first time in 2 years, real fear moved through me. If Adrian had recognized what the variable could reveal, he might also recognize why I had built such a detailed warning trail. Maybe I had underestimated him. What did you change? I asked. Chloe smiled. Nothing you need to worry about. Chloe, you don't work for me anymore. She turned her laptop toward me for half a second as she closed it. That was enough. I saw the revised executive model. The growth assumption had been pushed from a defensible range to 20%. The debt linkage had been expanded, and the risk disclosure had been reduced to a footnote. They had not discovered my trap. They had stepped into it voluntarily. I kept my face blank. Then good luck with the audit, I said. I packed one bag and walked out. The moment I reached the elevator, my hands started shaking. Because now there were 2 possibilities. Either the auditors caught what Adrian and Chloe had done, or Adrian realized before Friday that the original files proved I had warned them. If he realized that I did not know what he would do to keep me quiet. I stopped sleeping at my apartment. I copied the original model, my dated risk memorandum, and the message trail showing the changes requested after my warnings. I sent the records to an attorney and placed a second copy in secure storage. Then, 3 days before closing, I submitted an anonymous regulatory tip directing reviewers to the final model's sensitivity assumptions and the removed risk disclosure, not because I needed anyone to invent a crime. I only needed them to look at the decisions Adrian and Chloe had already signed. Friday arrived under a brutal New York downpour. I sat in a dark corner of a coffee shop across from Cross Capital, a black coffee cooling between my hands, 40 floors above me. The final Meridian signing was underway with Cross Capital's board, outside counsel, independent auditors from Whitmore and Hale, and regulators reviewing the financing package. Chloe would be wearing her best suit. Adrian would be standing beside her, calm and certain, believing he could force the numbers to obey him, the way people did. At Miza Mi Bay MP, and my phone buzzed unknown number. I ignored it. At Tweeny Wharf, it buzzed again. Adrian. My heart kicked once. Hard. Too early. I looked up at the glass tower through the rain. For a terrible second. I wondered if he had found the original files before the auditors had found the revisions. Then my laptop refreshed. Cross Capital's stock dipped. At Tlirheimi Font trading volume spiked. At Tihemi Salt the price dropped again. My phone rang. Chloe, I let it ring out. At Flitty the market alert hit. Cross Capital had delayed the Meridian signing pending review of material discrepancies in the financing assumptions. I exhaled for the first time in what felt like minutes. The Parker variable had done exactly what it was designed to do. When Whitmore and Hale stress tested the final model, the 20% growth assumption caused the debt exposure to explode across Cross Capital's equity base. The risk had not been invisible. It had been removed from the version presented for approval. That was the difference. At 34, Adrian called again. This time I answered. "What did you do?" he said. He was not shouting. That frightened me more. "Nothing. Don't insult me. The auditors are asking for prior drafts. They found the sensitivity warning." I looked down at the rainwater crawling across the window. "Then give them the drafts." Silence. "You planned this," he said. "I built a model that told the truth. You told Chloe to remove the part you didn't like." His breathing changed. "You think a paper trail protects you?" My fingers tightened around the phone. There it was again. Not panic. A threat. "It doesn't just protect me," I said. "It tells them who requested the 20% assumption, who approved the expanded debt linkage, and who signed the final disclosure." Another silence. Then Chloe's voice erupted somewhere near him. "Adrian, tell them it was Evelyn. Tell them she built it." I closed my eyes. Same voice. Same desperation. Different life. Adrian came back on the line. "I can destroy you." Maybe I said. "But first you'd have to explain why the great Adrian Cross knowingly let an unqualified girlfriend front a $50 billion transaction. Why you ordered documented risk warnings stripped from the final package. And why her signature is on the certification." His voice went very quiet. "Why?" I watched the red ticker slide lower across my screen. "Because nobody likes the quiet, smart girl," I said. The words tasted different this time. "Clean, they like the shiny girl." I paused. "But glass shatters, Adrian. You should never have built your empire on it." I ended the call. By noon, the merger was suspended. By early afternoon, Cross Capital announced an internal investigation. Reporters crowded the sidewalk. Cameras gathered beneath the building awning, while employees slipped out through side doors. The first subpoenas arrived before sunset. The investigation did not need my revenge story. It had documents, signatures, version histories, approval messages, and a final disclosure that no longer matched the model its own analysts had built. Chloe tried to blame me. Adrian tried to blame Chloe. The board blamed both of them. Weeks later, federal agents escorted Chloe from the Cross Capital building. After prosecutors filed charges tied to the falsified disclosures and financing representations. The woman who had spent years building her life around being seen was suddenly surrounded by every Camry in New York. Adrian came out later. No hand on Chloe's waist this time. No cold smile. No empire waiting upstairs. He looked older than I remembered him looking on the night I died. For a moment, across the barricades and flashing cameras, his eyes found mine. I expected triumph. Instead, what I felt was silence. The kind I had spent 2 lives being punished for. I had once believed power meant being the person everyone noticed when you entered a room. Chloe believed that too. Adrian believed power meant owning the room itself. They were both wrong. Power was knowing exactly where the weight rested and refusing to stand beneath it when the structure finally cracked. I turned away before either of them could see me smile. Rain had started again. Light this time, tapping against the pavement and washing the city clean. For years, I had carried the memory of poison in my throat and marble against my skin. I had imagined revenge would taste like blood. It didn't. It tasted like nothing at all. Like clean air. Like a life that finally belonged to me. I stepped into the rain and kept walking.